Telephone harassment in Washington state. What is it? Are you the victim of telephone harassment? Are you afraid you could get charged with telephone harassment? Or are you just interested in this area of the law? If any of that applies to you, this is the video for you. My name is Lance Fryrear, and I'm a defense attorney in Lynnwood, Washington, and we've been defending crimes for more than 20 years. And in this video, I'm going to cover three things. Number one, how is telephone harassment defined? It's pretty complicated. Number two, what are the penalties and situations where we might see telephone harassment charged? And number three, how might we defend such a charge if that's something that you're facing? So I'm putting out these videos for education for the public. And so if you like this video, please subscribe to our station because it helps get our message out there. Now I'm just going to jump right into it. Telephone harassment, how is it defined? And instead of reading the statute, and I'm going to link to it at the description of this video, so if you want to read the statute yourself, take a look in the comments in the description section. Think about it as two parts. One requires intent, what the intent was of the phone call that was being made, and two requires certain content in the phone call. And so for most areas of the law, something is only criminal if there's something called mens rea, or evil intent. And so the statute says something along the lines of, if somebody uses the telephone to make a telephone call with the intent to harass, intimidate, torment, or embarrass someone, then that could be a crime if the next section down is also included, the content of the call. So if the first part is, was there an evil intent? Was the intent of the phone call to embarrass, torment, harass, that type of stuff? If so, then the call has to contain certain features for it to be a crime. There's different sections of features, but one would be what was said, profane language, vulgar language, harassing language could make it a crime. Or it could be the type of call. If it's anonymous with the intent that we talked about before, that could be a crime. If it's repeated, or if it's at an extremely inconvenient hour, that also can turn that evil intent call into a crime. And finally, the third category of the content of the call, if it's threatening. If the call is threatening, and that's usually what we see with that evil intent, then that call very well could be charged as telephone harassment. So again, it's a little complicated. It has to be intentionally evil intent and then certain content of the call to make it a criminal act. So moving on to section 2 that I was going to talk about is what are the penalties for telephone harassment and what are some common ways that we see people get charged with that? Well, the penalties are, for the most part, it's a gross misdemeanor. Most telephone harassment charges are a gross misdemeanor, which means a maximum penalty of a $5,000 fine and 1 year in jail. In a couple different instances, telephone harassment can be a felony. And so the first instance where telephone harassment can be a felony is if the caller, the person making the call, has a restraining order against them, protecting the people that they're calling. A prior act of telephone harassment can turn it into that. And the most likely case where it can turn into felony the other time is the content of the call is a threat to kill. So if you call up someone with evil intent and say, hey, I'm threatening to kill, I'm going to kill you, that could be many crimes, including felony telephone harassment. So moving on to the other part of this, where do we see it charged? Usually it's two instances. One is a voicemail. The caller leaves a voicemail with a threat, so it's much easier to prove. That's by far the most common instance. The other time where we might see a charge is that repeated call thing where someone has a cell phone log of, hey, I got 15 calls at 3 a.m. from the same person, and they never left a message, but they called again and again and again. Well, that could satisfy the repeated, but there probably needs to be some other evidence of the evil intent. It could just be that they wanted to talk to you. They weren't trying to harass or intimidate. But if there's other evidence, repeated calls can turn into a crime. So the final section, and thanks for staying to the end, is how do we defend these things? Well, the most common way to defend a telephone harassment charge is sometimes it's hard to prove who made the call. How do we know whose voice that is on the voicemail? Or how do we know that it was actually you calling 15 times? It might have been your phone, but how do we know it was you calling? That's one way to defend. The second way is to deal with the mental health issues involved. Let's face it, if someone is doing telephone harassment type stuff, they're having some troubles at the time and they're having a hard time. And sometimes we can, the most important thing is get some help, get some counseling and figure out what's going on so we can feel better, and also show the prosecution and the court that the behavior isn't going to continue in the future. So I hope you found this video helpful. Again, I put it out for education. So if you find it useful, please like and please subscribe. And more importantly, if you're facing this type of situation, you can always give my office a call. Again, my name's Lance Fryrear. We've been defending people charged with crimes for more than 20 years. If you're in this situation, either as a victim or as a suspect, we'll listen to what happened. We'll try to figure out what we can do to help, and we'll be there for you. Thank you.